We got an interesting report ahead of NFL Week 3 on Mike McDaniel's job status from Ian Rapoport. He went on the NFL Network's Game Day preview on Sunday and shared some insight on when Mike McDaniel may get fired by owner Stephen Ross. And the verbiage that Rapoport used is that nothing is imminent at this time. And to me, I think that is a mistake. No urgency, no fire lit on McDaniel's seat right now is a mistake. Obviously, it is warm, and obviously, he can get fired if this poor season continues. But the fact that Ross might be being patient with McDaniel right now is just an absolute mistake. It is, and we'll share the quote from Rapoport and give you my full thoughts on the matter. But share today's video. Interesting report here by Rapoport. Click that share button. Go to Twitter/X icon. Click post to Twitter. If you tag me at Nick_Roloff when you share the video on Twitter, I'll give you a like and retweet. And I get it. I do. And going into the Thursday night football game against the Bills, I was saying, hey, if this game goes really bad, Miami gets embarrassed on primetime, I think McDaniel's plug could be pulled that Friday morning because it's the perfect time to do so. After a Thursday night game, the next game you have is Monday night, so you have a full week and a half to really get the changing of the guards, get through the media storm, if you will, and get focused back on football. And I get it. Week 3 is early. But how much more do we really need to see with Mike McDaniel at the helm? I get it. The Dolphins have made the playoffs in 2 out of his 3 full seasons. And yes, this has got off to a poor start, but teams start off poor and maybe can rattle off some wins to save the season. The point I'm trying to make here, we have seen so much of Mike McDaniel. Is there really anything that we're going to see that we don't already know? Because what we know about Mike McDaniel is that he beats the teams he should beat, and he can't win the big game. He can't do it in the regular season. He can't do it in the postseason. He can't win when Tua Tagovailoa is out. And recently, he can't win when Tua is in the ball game for Miami. And he can't inspire and lead a locker room. That is abundantly clear. I mean, just look at the records under Mike McDaniel against teams with a winning record versus teams 500 or worse. It's appalling at the difference. And let's now get into what Rapoport said on Mike McDaniel on that game day. He said, here's my understanding of where it all stands. Stephen Ross, the owner, plans to be patient. Almost always in the past in similar situation, he has been patient. I do not sense anything imminent regarding a potential change in Mike McDaniel's job status, mostly because Stephen Ross likes him, believes in him, and is invested in him. Gave him an extension, by the way. McDaniel still has 2 years left, worth more than $18 million coming up after this year. As far as what to look for, though, keep an eye on the locker room. If players suddenly stop playing for him, and that becomes a thing where you look on the field, you say these players do not believe in their coach, perhaps that can trigger some change. And maybe I am overreacting. Maybe I am way off base here. But I'm reading that quote. I'm listening to it on Sunday morning before the games kick off. And all I hear is the money. I mean, really. I mean, Rapoport could have said if the Dolphins lose next week, Mike McDaniel will be fired. But the fact that he specifically dropped the fact that Ross is invested in him, likes him, gave him a 2-year or has 2 years left on his deal worth $18 million. Like, to me, now this is all about money. And the fact that Ross doesn't want to fire a guy, even though he probably deserves to be fired, because he invested into him and gave him a contract extension before last year. Remember, we reported on that Coach McDaniel got an extension after his first 2 seasons. And I understand it. McDaniel made the playoffs back-to-back years in his first and second season as head coach. You wanted to give him money because it looked like this was going to be something that continued. But then disaster struck in 2024, and now it's off to a really rocky start in 2025. All I hear is the money. But it's time to clean house. And when I'm talking about cleaning house, this is not me referring to just Mike McDaniel and Chris Grier. No, the Dolphins have to do a complete reset. And it's unfortunate that this organization is going to have to go through this again because they just did it. And the hope was that this rebuilding portion of the organization is over after they got Mike McDaniel. But they got to get rid of Chris Grier. They got to get rid of Mike McDaniel. And the final piece of the puzzle is finally moving off of Tua Tagovailoa. It is painfully obvious he is not the franchise quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. All right, do the Dolphins need to clean house? Make the call. Tape Y for yes, type N for no. Today's pinned comment. Get down in the comments and answer today's question. Now, maybe this is a reason why the Dolphins are holding off on firing Mike McDaniel and Chris Grier. Maybe this is a complicating factor, and I've seen this get alluded to on social media. But the Dolphins don't want to be the franchise that has the knee-jerk quick reactions to where they're making quick firings just because they don't like how a season has started. You look at the Carolina Panthers and their owner, David Tepper, who's got quite of a temper. I mean, if we're going to be real here, the way he pulled the plug on Rule early in the year, didn't they have a coach in between? Who was the coach? Frank Reich, right? Yeah, Frank Reich, who's currently coaching Stanford. He got pulled really quickly, and then they have Dave Canales. And Canales looks good, but you saw an owner pull the plug on two coaches really early in a season. And that kind of scared some candidates, maybe like a Ben Johnson, some of these other top head coach candidates, to not want to go there. And that's something Miami is having to deal with. Well, we don't want to be a team that fires their coach and GM really early in the year because that might scare away future head coach and GM candidates from wanting to work for Stephen Ross. But I will make a counterpoint to that argument. We have given them enough time. Yes, McDaniel has only had one losing season, and it was last year. But you watch him coach, and it does not inspire you. It does not provide you confidence. This is the man that can bring you to a Super Bowl. And when it comes to the Chris Grier discussion, he's been GM since 2016. The Dolphins don't have a playoff win. No GM in professional sports would get 9 years of leeway without producing a playoff victory. And it's not like Miami has been there every year and just simply loses in the playoffs. No, they have only made the playoffs 3 times. So it's like they haven't got there. They haven't won when they got there. Why are we still employing Chris Grier? Like, he at bare minimum needs to go. And then if you clean house with him, you got to probably get rid of McDaniel as well. And this is going to be such a fascinating Week 4 game. Two teams that are 0-3, the Jets, the Dolphins. If the Dolphins lose to the Jets on Monday Night Football, I don't know how you could keep them around. I know Rapoport says nothing is imminent, and the locker room might have to be lost for firing to happen. But I would consider the locker room all but lost if they could not get off the mat, return home, and beat an 0-3 Jets team on primetime in their own building with a week and a half to prepare. That would be as rock bottom as it gets to drop to 0-4. Do I think the Dolphins will lose this upcoming game? I actually do not, and we have more on that coming up here in a second. But this game, I think, makes or breaks the season for Mike McDaniel. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. You and I make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this football season on PrizePicks, where it's good to be right. It's so simple to play. You just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you could cash in. PrizePicks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out of your lineup if it isn't perfect. Double your money even if one of your picks does not hit. I've got a massive entry for Monday Night Football. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown and Derrick Henry get into pay dirt. I think Lamar Jackson runs it more than 7 times. I think Sam Laporta gets 44 receiving yards. I think Tyler Loop has more than 8.5 fantasy score. I see a couple 40-yard spanks and a field goal, or excuse me, an extra point in there. And I also go more than Zay Flowers, 5.5 receptions. It's a doozy, but I also can win 30 times my money. Oh, yeah, you see that. Download that today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Heading into Monday Night Football, although it really won't impact anything, the Dolphins have the 4th overall pick in the NFL draft. There are 6 0-3 teams. You see 5 of them on screen right now. The 6th team is the Houston Texans, and they have the 6th overall pick. But the reason why I wanted to show this graphic is because this game between Miami and New York is low-key huge. Like, if Miami loses this game to the Jets, they will now have the inside track to the number 1 pick. They will. I mean, all seriousness, because the 6 teams that are 0-3, the teams that are most likely going to be competing for that number 1 overall pick right now, the Dolphins play the Jets twice, obviously. This one's in Miami, so you think you'd win that game. They play the Saints. They don't play the Titans, Giants, or Texans this year, but I also think the Giants and Texans are probably not going to end up in the same tier of like 3 wins. I think they probably get 5, which would take them out of the number 1 pick consideration. Like, this game could very well decide who ultimately ends up getting the number 1 pick in this draft if the season continues this way for each team. Now, I do want to make this abundantly clear. I am just telling you that this is a big game for the number 1 pick. It is way too early to start rooting for losses, in my opinion, and I am not doing it. I am still going to be rooting for wins because, yes, I do not think Miami can win a Super Bowl. Will it be a season where they make the playoffs? Probably not. But if you're rooting for losses this early in the season, I just think it's a bit egregious. I know some fans will say that you won't see real change unless this team just bottoms out, and that's why you want to see them lose. I do understand that line of thinking, but I also don't want to wait 6 months for the season to not even start, basically. It ended before it started. So I want to see Dolphins win some football games. I do. And we'll be here every step of the way, whether the Dolphins do win or lose. So subscribe today. Join the channel. We're 700 subscribers away from 76,000. Let's get there before Monday Night Football on September 29th. 30th? No, 29th, right? 29th. Yeah. All right, let's look at the Dolphins' schedule before the trade deadline because these are the 5 games that are the most impactful for Miami's season. They are, because the deadline, which is November 4th, right after Week 8, if the Dolphins are like a losing team, like they're 3-5, they're 2-6, they're probably trading off Tyreek Hill. They're probably trading off like Jalen Phillips. But the thing is, there's winnable games on the schedule. Jets at home, the Panthers, Browns, and Falcons on the road, and the Chargers at home. You play 4 teams that are 1-2 or 0-3. They're not good teams. You have the 1-3-0 team and the Chargers there. But is there a realistic chance the Dolphins go 4-1 in this 5-game stretch and go 4-4 heading into the November 4th trade deadline? Yeah, I really do think that's a realistic chance. Like, listen, Miami is 0-3. Yes. Did they look atrocious against the Colts? Absolutely. But that's a Colts team that's 3-0, and they look pretty good. Yes, the loss at home to the Patriots is unspeakable, if we're going to be honest. Like, that should never happen. And the loss in Buffalo, okay, that was expected. But you also looked really good against the Bills. And I know you can't take moral victories in a loss, but if you watch the Dolphins play the Bills and you're like, well, if they brought that effort every single day in every single game, well, they're probably going to be competitive in, at bare minimum, a 500 football team. And that's how I feel. If the Dolphins are able to bring the attention to detail, the focus that they brought for the primetime Thursday Night Football game, they should beat the Jets. They should beat the Panthers. Heck, they should probably beat the Browns, and I think they should beat the Falcons because Atlanta looks absolutely atrocious. Being the Chargers, a little bit out of the question, in my opinion. That team looks really, really good. But the point is that I want to make, the next 5 weeks decide jobs. They decide Mike McDaniel's job, they decide Chris Greer's job, because if the Dolphins are struggling and they're 3-5, they're 2-6 at the trade deadline, they probably trade Tyreek Hill, they trade Jalen Phillips, and those guys are no longer employed by the Dolphins, but you're also probably moving on from Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel, potentially in the middle of the season. You might hold on to Chris Greer throughout the season and fire him in January. But point is, if you do not go 4-1 in the next 5 weeks, I think the season is over. You sell and you fire your head coach and GM. If you even go 3-2, I still think you fire him because 3-5 isn't going to get the job done. You got to go 4-1 or 5-0 to be 500 or better at the trade deadline. Simply put, that needs to happen if these current players want to stay on the Dolphins and the head coach and GM want to be employed. That'll do it for today's show. Thanks for watching. We'll be back later today with a Dolphins live show, so subscribe and join us if you are not subbed already.